Good morning and welcome to Northwest Ohio Safety and Health Day. My name is Angie Garner, and on behalf of the entire Safety and Health Day Committee, we appreciate your attendance today. Since 1991, the Northwest Ohio Safety and Health Day has been providing free educational safety and health programs for area employers and employees. We appreciate the support of vendors and sponsors over the years that allow this free program to continue for the employers whose employees are made available to participate on our committees. We also thank those employers that have allowed the participants to join us today in order to continue their education. We would also like to recognize the Safety Council of Northwest Ohio, which is a nonprofit organization that has been serving Northwest Ohio since 1960. The mission of the Safety Council with its network of members is to enhance the quality of life by providing education, programs, and services that provide safety, health, and environment within our community. The Safety Council offers a wide variety of safety trainings and services to support its mission. The presentation you are attending is on setting up the new safety professional for success and is presented by Jim Mangus. A little bit about Jim Mangus. Jim has been working in the industrial health and safety for over 20 years. His education is a master's and bachelor of occupational safety and health from Columbia University and is a certified safety professional. He is married to Jill and they have 4 children, 2 out of the house and 2 still at home, and they live near Anna, Ohio. We ask that at this time, if everyone would put their computers on mute, if not already done, and please turn off your video. If you have questions, you can simply type them in the chat and they will be answered at the end of the presentation in the last 10 minutes. Please keep all chat to the topic and presentation and respect the speaker. And now I would like to welcome Jim Mangus.
Good morning. Thank you, Angie. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Can you see the screen? The presentation should be up.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I feel very fortunate when I get to speak at training sessions and conferences. Angie and I work together at Heritage Environmental, and so we get to talk quite often. And thought this would be a good topic to cover. So what we're going to talk about today is setting up new safety professionals for success. And I think it's a really important topic because, these days we're getting a lot of safety professionals that are coming out of college with some type of safety or health type degree. And, in the past, I think safety, we've still got a lot of people who work for us in health and safety that aren't degreed safety professionals, but have been doing it for a long time. So I think the trend is really becoming more and more of those degreed safety professionals, and even a lot of folks coming out of college and they're already pursuing their CSPs or they've got the GSP designation. So it's kind of reversed the roles where they're coming in with more education than they used to, but that doesn't mean that they're prepared necessarily. They've got the educational part down, but the field experience is often an area we see where new folks are kind of lacking. And that's really where people are going to fail or succeed. So kind of looking at our industry, I think over the years we've seen a shift to where more and more companies are hiring, EHS professionals or health and safety, kind of depending on their need. But I did a search last week, and on Indeed alone, they had over 22,500 open safety positions. So that's just one, search engine for jobs. There's probably a lot more out there. That's a lot of jobs across the U.S. open for safety, and I'm pretty sure there's more jobs than there are safety professionals. If you're anything like me, you're probably getting calls and emails from consultants routinely and recruiters trying to recruit you to go to another job. So there's a lot of openings out there, a lot of good things happening in the safety industry. I think where we're being recognized more than what we used to be as a legitimate profession. Years ago, I think, some industries understood the need for the safety professional, and as time has went on, it's become more of a necessity than what it used to be. So when you look at safety professionals, across the United States and and kind of how we're set up, whether you're involved in the environmental side or not. The safety profession is about 110,000 safety professionals strong, with employment opportunities across all safety related roles. And those are projected to increase through 2024. Again, I think, it's being recognized as more of a necessity than what it used to be. Back in the day when I started 20 plus years ago, it wasn't uncommon for HR folks to be, the safety person and HR and, 2 or 3 other jobs sometimes. So over time, companies have split it out, and that's a good thing. So this talk is really about how we set up a new safety professional for success when they start within your company. I know the company I work for in the last year, we've had 7 new safety professionals come on board, and from the corporate standpoint, we take them through an orientation as well as their site orientation. But it's when you have that many, you've got to be prepared to to make sure they're successful. There's a lot of moving parts in the business. So kind of looking at the past year and what we've done and how a new safety professional comes on board, we want to make sure from day one that it's understood what they need to do to succeed. Obviously, typically your first day or two plus is going to be some type of orientation, but this kind of goes above and beyond specifically just for safety folks. So they need to understand the business. And I think that's really important because, if you have a new safety person, whether they're right out of college or, they come from a different industry, even, they need to understand what you do as a company. I've hired people that the only experience they had in safety, and sometimes it's many years, that was just focused on ergonomics and forklift safety, where they're coming into a company that handles hazardous waste and chemicals and all these different hazards that they're not used to, so they're kind of underprepared. Now we can get them to where they need to be, but we have to have a good plan for that, and that's kind of what we want to talk about. So need to understand the business, building relationships, understanding their gaps, and training and mentoring. So we're going to go through kind of each one of these and talk about how to be successful. So I think from day one, understanding the business is important. They need to understand what you do and how you do things, the background, the history, how did we get to where we're at today. Make sure we give people the time to learn the jobs and tasks throughout the company. Quite often when at some of our facilities, we ask them to go out and participate in the jobs that we do. Some of it's things they can do, some of it's not. So it's more of an observing role. But when they can go out and get their hands dirty and see what the employees go through, that really gives a new safety professional a better idea of what hazards that they're going to encounter, what we've already done to mitigate the risk, and any opportunities for improvement in those areas. They're able to actually get boots on the ground and see what happens. Don't assume that people understand what the tasks are that you do, because quite often they may not, or they have a different version of what you may do. So them spending time in the field, getting a good understanding for what actually happens is a good thing. And we all know there's a difference between what we tell people in interviews and the orientation to what actually happens in the field, because you can't predict everything that goes on, right? The challenges of the day-to-day. You can take a basic job that's outside. If it rains, that creates a whole new set of hazard and risk for people in some industries. So getting a safety professional out to see the work being done is really critical. In some cases, the company that I work for, we have some folks that we ask to spend time in the field their first 3 to 6 months, really don't even focus on safety necessarily, but learn what we do, get to know people, and really get a good idea of what the company does and what we're all about. When it comes to relationships, this is really key. If you don't have relationships with people, you can't influence change, you can't affect change. So I think it's really important for new safety professionals to understand how important it is to go out and get to know the employees. They need to have that, one-on-one time, asking questions, getting to know people, and the bigger the company, the harder that is to do in a lot of cases. Excuse me. So you have to kind of set them up for success in the beginning and think about what that looks like. Getting them in front of the employees is always a good thing. Spending time learning the jobs is a good thing. Um, one of the common mistakes I think a lot of safety professionals make, and I've seen that in many companies over the years, they come into a new role and they want to make an impact right away. So they start to change things, and some things that may not even need change, but they're trying to make it their way of doing things. And quite often they're going to meet resistance. If the old way is a good way, it's safe. What we recommend is people don't make changes early on, unless it's something that's critical, that needs to be changed. We're not in compliance or it's dangerous. We're putting people at risk. That's a different story. But often people want to come in and make an impact and leave their mark early on. And sometimes when that happens, they get a little overzealous and they meet a lot of resistance. If you kind of take a little slower role, starting to get to know the people, learn the processes, make sure you're building those relationships so people know who you are and what you're about, that you're not there just to change everything they do, because quite often that's a fear that people have. Once you build those relationships, you're able to affect change a lot better. To have influence, we must build those relationships first. Whether it's changing how we do inspections, or getting a better pair of gloves, sometimes even improving things that people are going to like, they might not in the beginning because they don't know who you are. They don't know what you're about. They just see that you're trying to change things. They don't understand the why. So once we build those relationships, and some relationships come faster than others, we're able to affect change a lot better. So try to take a little slower approach to the change until the relationships are built. Is that always the perfect situation? No. Again, if you have situations that are immediately dangerous to life and health, then necessarily your changes are going to have to come a lot faster. But you have to be really good at selling the why, so people understand, why things are changing. So what are their gaps? If I think for all safety professionals, when we come into a new job, we're going to have some gaps of knowledge. Again, understanding the business and the hazards and things like that. But we need to make sure they really understand what the job is. What is it that we do in safety? One of the terms we hear, and none of us like it, is the safety cop, right? People put their PPE on when we're around. That's not what we want to do. We don't want to be that enforcement person, even though sometimes we have to be that way. That's not what we want. So I think it's important early on to identify the gaps that people have. Do they understand about building relationships and learning and asking good questions, and really approaching people from that learning standpoint, not the compliance enforcement type standpoint. Even a degreed safety professional may not really understand for many years what we really do in safety. And I think, throughout the presentation, you'll see some ways I recommend we bridge that gap. But, we've hired some brand new, right out of college safety professionals, and all they understand is what they've been taught in college. So they have the book knowledge, but they don't have the street knowledge. And that's sometimes very hard to get around. So it's going to take some time for people to really understand, what safety is all about. So do they understand, and this is a big question that I ask people, do you understand the difference between compliance and safety, really? And do you understand that compliance doesn't always equal safety? In many cases, the OSHA standard is the minimum. And quite often, for us to do our jobs effectively, we're going to have to go above and beyond what the requirements are. There's not a standard for everything we do. There's not a standard for every hazard that's out there. A lot of it's going to fall back to the general duty clause. So I think your safety professionals have to understand the difference. It's not all about OSHA. For me as a safety professional, I like to keep OSHA out of it and make sure people understand we're doing this because it's the right thing to do. I want to get everybody home safe every day, and not necessarily, not all the answers are going to be in the OSHA standard. We've got to look to other resources, other safety professionals, and industry best practices. So that question, I think, evolves in people's minds over time. But I think what you see with a lot of fresh safety professionals right out of school, um, they don't have that background and knowledge yet to understand that we're not just basing things on OSHA. We've got to come up with some other ways to get the work done, because every industry offers different challenges than what's in the standard. So still focusing on their gaps in the beginning. A person that's never performed training or toolbox talks and safety meetings, it's a great way to get them out in front of people. The sooner you can get them comfortable talking and interacting. I think one of the things we've seen is the younger age groups that don't necessarily like to communicate in person are struggling a little bit with that in-person relationship building. So when it comes to the training sessions and the toolbox talks, the safety meetings, or just that person-to-person interaction, they're struggling a little bit. Where those of us, with 20 years experience, I know some people with 20 years experience that struggle, doing training. They're not comfortable in front of people. But those are the things we have to do, right? That's part of most of our jobs, is getting out and talking and sending a message, or providing training, or just being there for support. But that person-to-person interaction is going to be important. If the safety professional is not seen as approachable, especially newer folks, that's going to kill their chances of building relationships. So they've got to get out and get that personal interaction. I think I tell people a lot, even if you don't talk about safety, talk about, something else, talk about sports or whatever, you pick. But building those relationships based on other things will encourage that relationship about safety in the long run. And I think our new safety professionals have to be educated in prioritization and time management. It's easy to have a list of 20 things and, work on number 18 today and number 11 tomorrow and number 7 this afternoon. But we have to prioritize on what's really the important things. And a lot of times I think people aren't good at prioritizing. So, I tell our people, what are your top 3 things you're working on right now? Where are your injuries coming from? Where are your compliance risk, those type things, the big things, what's going to get people hurt. Those are the things we should be working on. Obviously, we all have competing priorities, and in today's workplace, there's a lot of that. So helping people understand how to prioritize and manage their time better is critical. Understanding their baseline, making sure when people come into the company, they understand the OSHA standards that affect you the most, whether it's general industry, construction, and adding in PSM. And remember, someone new to the industry, even if they have a degree in safety, they're not necessarily going to understand the ins and outs of how things work. The construction industry, oil and gas, chemical, hazardous waste. We all have our little niche things that we do, and certain OSHA standards that are going to be higher priorities to us than others because of what we're exposed to. So make sure they understand those. Another thing that I would recommend is making sure that the training they had, their college degree, their certifications aren't the end of it. Not everybody's ready for the street. Make sure they get some good training. There may be some initial gaps. I've got some people again who, came from a company where they focus on forklifts and ergonomics, but they don't know much about lockout tagout. They don't know much about confined spaces. So send them to those training classes, get them up to speed. If they're the right person, you can train them and develop them. Some of the things that we often send people to is the COSS certification, Certified Occupational Safety Specialist, and Milliken Safety Boot Camp. I attended that a couple years ago as a safety professional, probably one of the best training courses I've ever been to. In fact, I'd like to go back again. Those are 2 really good training courses that I'd recommend for anybody, no matter what your years of experience are. Attending conferences routinely. and then finding a mentor. Everybody needs that person to lean on, someone to look up to and ask questions to. And quite often our new safety professionals don't have that person. So if you're not a mentor, be one. Find somebody to mentor. It's great development for you and for them. You're going to help somebody grow in their role. And last, just a quick summary. We've talked about a lot of things in a short amount of time, but we are in a rapid growth profession, and more people are coming out of college without that workplace experience. Experience is going to take time. We're not going to get the 20 and 30 year veterans with all this experience like we used to. They're coming, they're retiring. We're losing them rapidly. So, and I think the last thing to point out is if you want to succeed, you got to lead. We're all leaders to some extent in our businesses and our industries. So, mentor people, find someone to mentor, get mentored. It's a good thing. But overall, we have a great profession. More and more people are joining, and I think that's a good thing for the viability of it. So, looking forward to the future. So, any questions or comments for me?
I'm looking in the chat. There's not anything in here. So maybe you knocked it out of the park. I don't know.
Angie, are you going to share the presentation with everybody? You're welcome to, if that's an option.
Sure. Yeah, I can share that with everyone. So we do have one question. It says, are the job openings very tied to environmental only or occupational safety?
I think there's a lot of both. I routinely look at LinkedIn and Indeed and those, just kind of seeing what's out there, and there's a lot of different job titles and ways that people look at it. There's a lot of EHS, environmental health and safety positions, but a lot of companies have really split it up, and it used to be one kind of one role, and I think more and more as more challenges come about with environmental and sustainability, even we're seeing safety and environmental roles kind of separate depending on the company. So I wouldn't say it's 50-50, but there's definitely a split between the companies that are hiring the dual roles.
All right. Well, I don't see any other. Oh, hold on. Here comes one. Do most companies want the younger, more inexperienced, or older, more experienced?
I think that it depends on the company and what their needs are. I think we want the people that can grow in the industry, obviously, but um, depending on if it's a larger facility, a larger company where you're going to be overseeing a larger group of people, I think they want the more experienced folks, where someone fresh out of college isn't ready necessarily for that manager or director type role. So I think having a few more years of experience and some leadership, and maybe having some people report to you, it's going to take a few years to get where you need to be. Sometimes it's those other management skills we've got to learn and be taught, after we get into our first position. So I think we have to grow into some of it. But yeah, I see companies routinely wanting to hire, people with just a couple years experience and put them into more of a coordinator or a specialist role, and then they have to work their way up to manager. So it just, again, it kind of depends on the industry and kind of what they're looking for. I don't think it's anything really defined.
Next question is, do you have a timetable for what you feel is an adequate time frame for a new person to assimilate into a new safety environment?
I don't think there is a timetable. I think it really depends on how fast they learn and their exposure, really. Just because your company, say you do confined spaces routinely every day, you may be really good in confined spaces, but there may be other parts of the the safety realm, you may not do a lot of fall protection or lockout, tagout, or other things. So I don't know the timetable. I guess I started off in safety with very little education, but I got the job first and then worked my way up. So, I think honestly to see everything and get all the involvement, engagement that you need, I think, 5+ years in safety, depending, again, it depends on what your company does and what you're exposed to. Someone that's never been exposed to an OSHA audit or an OSHA complaint, you may be 10, 15 years into your career before that ever happens, but that's not a deal breaker. I think it's all those other things. Have you done training? Are you leading? Can you write procedures and all these other experiences that you have to have? I don't know that there's a timetable for it. I think it's kind of individually and what experiences you have in a certain period of time.
Any other questions for Jim? Let's see, based on the hiring difficulty in this country is facing right now, do you feel it is affecting the safety jobs also?
It's definitely affecting the safety jobs. And we've had several jobs that have been open. One in particular we've had open for almost a year, and we've had almost no applicants. There's only been 4 or 5. And some of it depends on what part of the country you're in. And we've had some other jobs that were posted, and we had someone hired in 3 weeks. So it kind of depends on where they're at in the country, and a lot of it is, if your industry, when you're in an area with heavy industry, there's more safety people around, so you tend to have more options. But yeah, I think it's definitely hard to find people. I've had one company has called me 4 times in the last year and a half for a site manager opening. And I've told them no every time. I'm not interested, but they haven't found anybody in like a year and a half. So maybe they're too picky. I don't know. But I definitely think the situation we're in with hiring is affecting all professions.
Are there a lot of safety opportunities in Northwest Ohio for safety manager type jobs?
I think recently I've looked, I think there are some openings. I can't speak of any right offhand, but Ohio is there's typically quite a few safety jobs open in Ohio across the state. And I think from, Dayton north, you've got a pretty good area of safety job opportunities usually pretty often. So kind of depends on the time of year too. So some parts of the year are more likely to have more jobs open. So yeah, I would have to look, but there's usually some openings in Northwest Ohio, a lot of businesses.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, well, Jim, I just want to thank you for your time today. I do have one more question. Can you recommend a good safety manager training program to attend without long travel?
I think actually the company who does the cost certification has a certified occupational safety manager training course, which I think is good. Um, there's a couple others I'll recommend to Angie, and she can share those with the group if that's okay.
Sure thing. Yeah, the safety council does do the cost and the COSM program both.
Okay, no, that's good to know. I'd recommend those. Great programs.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, then we will give you back some of your time today. And again, from myself and the committee, thank you for taking the time to attend the session. Jim, thank you for taking the time to present to this group. It is much appreciated.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Thanks. So we will have a lunch break and then we will resume at 12:30 with session 4, We're Too Tough to Talk. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.